You are now experiencing HUEXM.
Let's go. Yo. What's up? What's good, y'all? It's me, J-Bo, and you are experiencing HUEXM Sports. Yes, HUEXM Sports. And today we're going to be diving into a topic that's shaking things up in the college sports scene. You probably already heard of this term, name, image, and likeness, better known as the NIL. So, this isn't just a game changer here. This is actually a life changer. And today, we're not only peeling back the curtains on how these athletes can make money while still in school, but we're actually questioning the entire system that has put these athletes there. Now, let's back up for a minute. Back in the day, the NCAA had a hard grip on the do's and don'ts, saying no to any form of personal profit based off of your athletic fame or even participation. Well, those rules no longer exist anymore, and that's the reason why we're having this conversation. As a matter of fact, back then, those rules were enforced heavily. So there were major consequences for any type of infraction for violating those rules. These consequences could have been loss of eligibility, temporary suspension, or even permanent bans from the sports that they played. And even for those athletes that were skilled enough to move to the professional league, they still often entered with a scarlet letter based off of those past infractions from college. Let's take Reggie Bush for an example, because he's fresh on people's mind because he just received his Heisman Trophy back. But like I said, damn near 2 decades ago, they took away his Heisman for allegedly, and they were saying it was, against those infractions. So, and he's just now getting it back. So that tells you how serious this rule was back in the day before they started to allow these student athletes to reap the benefits on their name, image, and likeness. So that goes to show that's a great example. Now, let's fast forward to now. And athletes are playing their sports, and they're also now playing the game of life, or let's say the game of business. Because now they have to balance the books, their brand, and basketball, or whatever sport that they decide to play. So this is going to be fun. I got the crew with me today, B Mac and Dr. Wilson, and we're going to dive into this discussion. Now remember, we're here to challenge how athletes think about themselves and how societies are now thinking about these athletes, especially now because these athletes now have the potential to be CEOs or their own brand leaders. Because, yes, they will be managing their own brand, or at least name, image, and likeness. So the big question is going to be, are these NIL deals just a quick cash grab? Or are we watching a new generation of athletes chasing this bag, but very responsible? I don't know the answer to it, but we're going to find out during this conversation. So that's enough of me talking. Let's go ahead and check in with Kat and Bill. And I'll see y'all on the other side. All right, man. I'll holler at y'all. Peace out. Well, shoot, let's jump into this. Y'all know our names, and if y'all don't, we'll put it in the description. Y'all see it here. We got y'all. All right. All right, so here's what we're going to talk about today, man. Tell me, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this title? Selling out or cashing in? How NIL deals are redefining athlete identity.
Okay, Bill, you go first.
I'm cashing in. Straight cash. That Randy Moss quote, straight cash, homie. I am cashing in on the opportunity that we now believe to know as NIL. It has changed everything for the student athlete to not only monetize their name, image, and likeness, but also to even get a head start on branding for said NIL. It may be too early for like some at like the 18, and I say that loosely, but just to have the opportunity to have that is, man, such a switch compared to when we were athletes. So like even to have the opportunity to to engage in the NIL and have these different verticals to make additional money outside of your scholarship stipend, that level of exposure, I think is just completely fascinating.
You hit it on the nail, man. I'm so excited for these youngsters. Kind of jealous too. I wish I was 20 years younger. I would be interested to be like, hey, what would it look like for us? Before we get into how we feel about it, Katrin, what is it NIL for those who are just may not fully understand what NIL really means and stands for?
So NIL is the name, image, and likeness. It's a new legislation that came through based on prior athletes not being able to capitalize on their name, their image, and their likeness. We can go back to Ed O'Bannon and the UCLA basketball team and many players whose name, image, and likeness were used in video games, but they weren't being compensated for it. So now it's legal to make money off of your name, your image, and your likeness, even though in the past, technically you were kind of making money, it just wasn't legal because you had the golden handshakes after the game.
Yeah,
because of
with
your
the
name.
envelope. Yeah,
It was your name, your image, and your likeness, right?
Exactly.
So it was always there, just making it legal now.
Absolutely. Quick question, guys, because I know you were talking, but it seemed like it glitched. I just wanted to make sure that, all right, you're back on. I hope it recorded that.
Yeah, I didn't see anything on my end that stopped.
Yeah, me either. It was smooth.
Cool. All right, then hopefully the recording got it, but at least they were able to hear it. Y'all work with us. We some amateurs out here. We're gonna get it together.
Right.
But y'all heard what she said. No, like you were saying, name, image, and likeness.
Right.
Something that. Go ahead.
So when I think of the athlete now, like I hear what you guys are saying, but I'm on the other side of it. I'm looking at the balancing act, right? Because now my character is on full blast. It's on full display. I have to be mature enough to know that I am more than just my own personal brand, but I am the brand of who's paying me now. So now my name, image, and likeness is being used in a way that I have the ability to control it, but am I mature enough to kind of know what that really means, right? So if we go back, okay, so now I'm aging myself. If we're going back and we're looking at if NIL was out there when, what is it, Brian Bosworth?
Bosworth, yeah.
The Boss? Right.
When the Boss was
Oklahoma?
out there. Oklahoma? Right, yeah. It was like, where would he have fit? Because that kind of bravado in sport wasn't marketable on the grand scheme, but the booster on the side kind of liked it, so you can get something on the side, but now it's making it broader. So my hope and interpretation of it would be that there's a level of communication, studying, like what does it mean to be a brand ambassador, because that's basically what you're doing, right? So everybody's like, I want to be like Mike. You're literally about to be like Mike at 18.
Facts. And that's what I was saying earlier too. Like some of these kids, it may be premature to ask so much of them, but that's where we are today. Like to you guys know the phrase, but it's interesting to see these 18-year-olds step into this limelight.
It's a business. Right. They gotta know the business. Like, what does it mean for taxes? How does that impact financial aid? Like, are we having those conversations?
So, and that's what I'm more curious about. Like, I understand that, but what I want to know, like, all right, cool. We understand, like, all right, we can go out and get it for ourselves, right? Like, yeah, we're gonna perform on the field, but even some people, like, I give you a perfect example. Let me use me. Like, although, yeah, I started for my team in college, I wasn't a featured athlete. I wasn't the quarterback. I wasn't the linebacker or DN who went to the league, but I was charismatic and I had some motion going on, on campus. Like, does somebody who may not be the biggest factor on the field can be able to kind of produce or set up their own NIL deal based off of their own unique brand? And if so, how much time does it take me away from why I'm really there, which is to play ball and get my education? Like, because now it's a hustle. You feel me? Like, what does that look like?
Complicated, right?
Okay.
But what student athlete life wasn't complicated?
True.
Right. Yeah. Now you're just getting paid for your complication. Like it's just open now, right? It's just open. It wasn't there before. It's just now it's more open. And when you're looking at the ability to influence, your ability to influence is well beyond what people see during the time of play, because people see you, they know you, they may not know what impact you actually have on the field or on the court or any arena that you're in, but you can influence just by having on the jersey. So a kid wants the jersey, right? Like, oh, who's that? The guy that talked to me, right? It wasn't nothing special, but you're on the team, right? So the ability to influence now is so much, I'm not gonna say it's greater, but it is because of social media, right? If your social media, not tag, but your name and everything says your school and your position, people who like the school are gonna follow you automatically. So now they're already following you. So now that just opens up the door again. Again, it's just broad, and it's a good thing. It's great. It's capitalism is what we're made on, right? But it's just how do we do it the best way? So now we're talking generational wealth, right? Legitimately, how do we do it? You know, am I putting it up for insurance reasons and all the other stuff? You know, but
because now you got an opportunity to earn a bag before you make it pro. And like, we know the statistics, not everybody get a chance to make it pro, but you can be good enough to get some attention. I was always thinking, I'm like, all right, if I was in college and I was able to conjure up an NIL deal, maybe it may not be something that came down from the school, but like locally, I can go back to my neighborhood and kind of position myself within my community for some things. And now they can kind of support me and do all those things. And you know me, I'm big off branding, I'm big off business. Like you are now a walking, not only are you a walking brand, you're a walking business. So it's like, all right, do we start talking to attorneys about, you know, setting up our LLCs and all of those things, which is, here's what I like about that. And Bill, I think you mentioned that earlier. It is a shift in consciousness, because now very early, you're starting to treat things like a business. When we were playing sports, our coach will always say that this is a business. We understood it, but we really didn't understand it. You feel what I'm saying? But it's like, no, this is going to force me to conduct myself a certain way in the community. Because like I said, I was a wild one back in the day. But if I knew I had opportunity to go and position myself to get an extra bag, it will behoove me to act accordingly in the public eye, depending on what I may put on my Facebook. That I'm dating myself for how old I was. That's all we had, Facebook and MySpace. You feel me? Or how I would conduct myself, like I said, out in the community, going to the clubs and things like that. I'm like, okay, these eyeballs is on me. You know, you never know who want to put me in position to earn an extra buck. So I'm pretty sure it is a shift in consciousness with the student athlete, especially the student athletes from the culture.
And then you get the student athletes, I'm sorry, Bill, the female student athletes. And we even talked about that when the WNBA draft came. It was like, yeah, they're making less money now as a professional than they were getting their NIL deals as a collegiate athlete.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, spot on. J-Bo, I'm gonna challenge that one just a little bit, just a tiny little bit, but I'm gonna go back to an earlier point. Yeah. You mentioned our young men and women that aren't as notarized getting the same NIL opportunities as, say, like the Jujus of the world or like other, you know, brand names. Yes and no. Obviously, it's capitalism. They're not getting as much, but there are some schools that give, or at least try to pull enough resources together where they're giving NIL deals to most, if not all, of their scholarship athletes. The amount, though, is predicated to obviously what you can provide the program. If you're a higher caliber player that is going to change the trajectory of the program, that bag is a little bit bigger. If not, that bag is a little bit smaller. But most of these young men and women today are getting some form of NIL, even if it's, you know, several thousands of dollars versus tens of thousands, if not hundreds and millions of dollars that some of the brand names are getting, particularly in football. The piece I want to challenge you to, though, J-Bo, is around if it was set up the way it is for us. Wait, let me rephrase this. If it was set up for us in our day, I'm not sure we would look at it any differently. And here's why.
Okay.
Because we have to worry about social media the way they have to worry about social media today. You get what I'm saying?
I do.
Like we were at the beginning of, more so me, because you came out a few years before, but when I was in college, Twitter and Facebook was just now starting to
my junior year, my senior or junior year is when Facebook first started, 2004. Right. Yeah.
Right. So not everybody had it. It was one of those things where, like, if you had one, you had it. And if you did, not a lot of people were on it. It wasn't very visible. It wasn't to the point where today, now, where job employers
you're not even using it for that. Right. You know what I'm saying? Exactly.
Today, you apply for a job, they're looking up any public social media that you have that they can pull and try to find something. But so when we were there, it wasn't quite like that. It also wasn't the culture of every time something happens, somebody pulling their phone down and trying to take pictures and record. So there's a lot of things that we did and we got away with because of the time in which we were playing college football. Cameras and photos and videos wasn't so prevalent. And even to go a step further, you know as well as I know, at that time, there isn't very many things that can knock you off that high horse. You thought as well as I thought, even if I get in trouble, I'm going to be okay. Somebody is going to bend this rule
For me,
90 degrees, 45 degrees. I'm going to get a slap on the wrist and I'm going to carry on about my business and continue the path forward. And while that probably is still happening, let me not say that. But today is just so vastly different, right? Just with social media and it's just night and day. So I challenge that one a little bit. But to your earlier point, a lot of these young men and women are still getting NIL deals. They're just not as large as others.
Let me ask you a question. I'm glad you challenged that. This one's specifically for you. And even Kat, you can chime in because you guys serve in a specific community, right? Where most of the athletes you're dealing with are first generation, right? I would love for you to share with me, what is their mindset and how are they approaching this? And like I said, we're dealing with money. Some athletes, some players are going to have opportunity to make big bucks. Some are going to get opportunity to make some, but depending on, we know this demographic, 10 to 20,000 is a game changer to some of these people. So how are they looking at it? Is it something intimidating for them, or are they starting to really, narrow in and take this thing serious and being more strategic around it? What are you guys seeing?
So for me, the conversation, I'm starting the conversation. So it's things that they don't even think that they're worthy of, right? And that hits me. It's like, no, I'm not going to get none of that. Well, why do you think you wouldn't? Right. So now it's about having that conversation about your worth and your ability to influence. And that's why it's part of it. It's a deal you can get for yourself. So it's a new conversation. It hits different areas, but they're not exposed to it yet. So we're trying to expose them to it now so they can understand what it means and what it is. And it is a little intimidating because they're not sure what's going to be expected of them in that. So yeah, it's a new conversation.
How is that conversation like? If you can kind of go a little bit deeper, like how are you even positioning it,
So when we're talking to athletes about it, I ask, do they know anything about it first? Right. And it's like, yeah, they hear it, but they only hear it from ESPN or any of the major platforms, but it's of people that they see all the time. So they don't think that there's anybody who is like a nobody that could get one. And it's like, but depending on what school you're going to, you can.
That's what I wanted to know. Because like I said, they're seeing it, but they still may think it's just a far chance as like trying to make it to the league. They only see the big names, the Caleb Williams and all of those guys.
They don't see the other part of it. So I'm having them do research, look on rosters, because now when you go online, because they don't have the physical media guides anymore, but when you can go online and you can look at a person's profile and they will let you know what NIL deals they have. And so it's like, you can look and it's like, so follow them this season, see who they are. And it was like, oh, Doc, there wasn't even nobody. They barely played. But you saw that they had an NIL deal and they did something. So now it's like, oh, okay, it's possible. So just getting them to do the business part of it, of doing the research, seeing what's out there and how it is attainable for them. That's a new conversation.
Yep. A lot of these schools will even post that with their signing classes. Like this person signed, here's his NIL deal. Like a lot of this is public information. But to Kat's point, in my experience, it's like, I feel like the old head that's preaching and these young heads really don't want to hear what I'm saying. Like it goes in one ear and out the other, and that's okay. I'm planting seeds that I hope is going to harvest at some point down the line. But that's truthfully how I feel when I introduce these conversations to them about NIL and trying to protect what they're earning and even be smart about their decisions and not trick it off trying to buy material things, but to look long term. Because to your point, J-Bo, 99% of us go professional in the sport another sport, or actually the professionalism, not the actual sport. But getting them to have that conversation early is hard because, again, when you're in that position, you think you're going to the league. It doesn't matter what anybody tells you. You're there. I'm in it. I'm going. You can't tell me otherwise. So they're not really trying to hear that. And I feel like the old head that's introducing books or introducing concepts and paradigms, and then look, Coach Mac, I ain't trying to hear that shit, man. Like I'm trying to talk about right now. You're talking about 5 years from now.
Yeah. They're like, where the money at? I'm trying to get moms out of here. I hear you.
And even with the NIL, they can get moms out of here, but it's different, right? It's not the check because you played. It's the check because of who you are. And again, that's the scary part, because a lot of them don't know who they are yet.
Now we talk. Okay, now we talk. Let's stick with this. Now we talk, because I'm big off of that. Man,
you know, I love me some identity, right?
Know thyself, brand thyself. You hear where I'm going? So
Right.
it's like, listen, and we're talking to youngsters. I mean, we're talking about 18 to 21, right?
Yeah.
So I remember where I was nowhere near where I was, mentally.
Right.
But getting them to understand it's not about how much you make today. It's what you build today that's going to sustain you to tomorrow. And Bill, you were saying it's one ear out the other. I probably would have been guilty of that back in the day. Like, is now that they have access to, capital so early, is there some type of infrastructure that's kind of besides you guys, because you guys get it, you understand, but is there one thing I'm big off of? Whenever there's something new that comes in any industry that's a game changer, I always believe it needs to be some form of infrastructure that follows up to make sure there's checks and balances. Are you guys seeing that?
So like
not at my level.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Not at my level, but like at the Division I level, there are definitely checks and balances and conversations that are had in closed doors about how to manage said things. But as the phrase goes, you can lead the horse to water, you can't make the horse drink. Think about how many meetings you sat in, J-Bo. I can recall a few at myself at K-State where they told us, now that Facebook is becoming popular, don't take photos with red cups. Don't do this, don't do that. It goes in one ear, not the other, because what Kanye say, it's hard to be humble when you stand on a jumbotron. So going back to that paradigm at 18 and 21 years old, when you say this all the time, J-Bo, with branding, you're as popular as you're ever going to be. Now, use that, like, just compartmentalize that for a second, right? You're as popular as you're ever going to be. You also have tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, depending on your NIL deal.
Right.
And you're feeling yourself and really trying to take all this in and treat yourself as a business is a very, very hard thing to grasp for anybody, let alone an immature mind that doesn't know thyself yet.
Right.
Mm.
And we're at the community college level, right?
Right.
So that's even a harder shell to break because of the perception of being at a community college.
Okay.
Whether you have to be there, need to be there, or just happen to be there. It's like they have
to be there, need to be there, or happen to be there.
Right. So those are some things that you have to break. And it's like, as much as we're there and we're saying it again, wherever they are, we have to try to get into that mindset and try to shift it. But it's hard. It's hard, right? So when do you start, right?
Right.
So me, I'm always trying to figure out how far back do you go? So even if you're going to the Pop Warner Little Leagues and things like that, who have better uniforms than we have at the community college level, right? So it's like, okay, so how we gonna get this?
Several variations of it too, Kat. Like my son is playing right now. They got 4 or 5 different uniform alternatives. I'm like, dude.
Right. So how do we teach them? Because it happens, because even you looked at the draft, they tell you, oh, they played in this little league. Oh, they was in this. So it happens then. So is it happening on that level? Are we having the conversation about your name, image, and likeness at 8 in these big leagues that are traveling and AAU and all that stuff? Are we having that conversation there? That I don't know.
What's interesting about that is that the short answer is I don't think. I'm going to say no, but I'd be remiss.
Well, down in my house, though.
Family. Yeah, I'd be remiss to say there isn't some family somewhere that is having that conversation. And the reason why I said I was tuning into the Pivot podcast, they interviewed Caleb Williams, and it's a pretty decent listen for about an hour long if you have the time. But the reason I even ring that up, and I probably shouldn't be referencing them because we don't have their permission, but needless to say, they were talking to this young man, obviously the first overall draft, and he was talking about how he was trained to be the way he is now since Cat, like 10, 11 years old. This dude was doing 5 a.m. workouts. He was having conversations about how to conduct himself in front of the camera. This man had, and if I'm paraphrasing, but he was living in DC, but I think he grew up in Baltimore, or the inverse, something to that extent. That area is maybe 45-ish minutes apart with no traffic, hour and a half with traffic. But this young man lived on his own as a high school kid. And even him saying that made my mind go, the mental maturity of this young man to live on his own at 14, 15, 16, 17, whatever he was on that spectrum was profound to me, because to be that mature, to get to the point he is now, then carry that forward was just like, there are some families that are having those conversations at a young age, and kids and boys and girls are being groomed to that point. But that's truly, I believe, the 1%. That's why he is where he is and why he went where he went.
Right. Right.
That makes sense. And so whoever gets the opportunity to watch and listen to this, and if you're a parent with a student athlete, the earlier you start from a mental standpoint and preparation, like I said, you can go to any park and you might see a dad or uncle working out with their son or their daughter. We got that part. We know how to go and work. But there's, Bill, I don't know if you caught this, but there's other aspects to it. Like you said, how do I conduct myself in the public? Am I media trained? Do I have a business mindset? How am I approaching not only the game of sports, but how am I approaching the business of sports? That was the reason why I said earlier, Bill, there's a conscious shift, if that makes sense. This sports have always been serious because we always knew that was the golden, that was the Willy Wonka ticket, right? But now, you feel what I'm saying?
That was the golden ticket.
It's the golden ticket. You feel me? But now this is big business.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? This is a whole game plan. And like I was having this conversation with the wife. It's like, listen, we understand the statistics. Every athlete knows the statistics. I hate telling them the statistics because even though we know the statistics don't apply to us. That's how we're freaking programmed and wired. Because if we focus on the statistics, we'll never become that statistic. You feel where I'm coming from? Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and out that and be like, all right, well, while I'm going through this gauntlet, no matter how far I get, what can I get while I'm going through this process? That's the paradigm shift. And that's why I freaking love it.
Yep.
My next thing I want to bring up, unless you guys got something to say on it, is I do want to talk about the integrity of this. And because, like I said, whenever something new rolls in, there's always room for more exploitation. Yeah, the back in the day thing was a form of exploitation, right? If I was a top dog and you're selling all of my jerseys and I'm not getting a penny, yeah, that's a form of exploitation. That's the reason why we kind of changed the landscape. But now that there's money flowing through hand in hand, is there room or can these students still be exploited in some way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because we don't know the details of the NIL agreement.
Say it again, Kat.
We do not know the details of the NIL agreement, right?
Okay.
So it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna give you this much, but you got to be here every Saturday at this time to do this much, this often. And if you don't do this, I'm taking this from you. And if you do this, I'm taking this back. Like, we don't know the words that are written in the contract because it's a contract, right? And when you sign your name on the dotted line, you're agreeing to all of that, not just agreeing to the bottom line of the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
What is going to be required of me? How much do I have to do? Oh, you have to make 14 posts after the game, and it can't be more than an hour before like lockdown or after the game is over. Like, we don't know. So even in that aspect, it's exploiting because it's like you're still using my name, image, and likeness, but now you telling me how to use it.
Yo, Kat, I'm sorry to cut you off. I just had a crazy ass vision. I can imagine myself being a coach at a Power 5. We just had a loss, right? And we walk into the locker room and I see 6 of my 5 best players like yo, what is we doing?
Yeah.
But that might be where we headed.
It might
be. For sure. And even
but you've seen coaches go off in a locker room about even having your phones. But they want me to post at halftime. They want me to say something.
Yep. But unequivocally, there's an avenue for exploitation because it's regulated on a state to state level, and just do what you will with that information. Like even passing laws on a state to state level pales in comparison in our union. So like there's a lot like this. This rabbit hole is deep.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. How does this affect, since we're talking about locker room, how does this even affect locker room dynamics? Because now we got some real hateration going on. Like, this dude out here.
Right.
He got 2 point what? I got the standard edition. I got the regular scholarship. I get I don't know what scholarship now, maybe 1,500 inflation. But this guy getting a 10 band check every month. Like, what we doing?
Right.
Buddy.
It's deep. It's deep. I can't even imagine
I was gonna say I can only imagine. I mean, like think about J-Bo, think about your own experience in a locker room and how jealousy set in because of social dynamics. That wasn't even including money,
Money.
just right, just pure personality, maybe looks, and how that worked with a locker room full of men that may be looking at you with the side eye. Now add in a component of this dude has $1 million NIL deal and has a penthouse in downtown Los Angeles. Like, think
Bro,
about what conversations are being had
bro,
in silence
bro.
right now in these
I'm
locker rooms.
pulling up. I'm pulling up. What's these kids driving now? I'm pulling up in my normal Charger, right? This cat pulling up in the new,
Right.
in the Ferrari. Wait, what are we doing here? Hold up.
Right.
Damn.
And then is there anything in the NIL deals, because you see a lot of times teammates buying their teammates something,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, that's
So
nice.
how is it? Is it like, okay, yes, I can buy my teammates things, but then if my teammate is signed with one company and they're giving me and gifting me something else, and I'm on social media showing that they gave this to me, can I not do that?
How does this conflict? Yeah.
Right. So then
Yeah.
it's like, now my teammate gonna think, okay, so you don't like what I gave you? It's like, yeah, but you're messing up my thing if I show it,
Right.
So again, jealousy,
Yep.
right? And then it was like, well, I don't even have enough to give the team. I appreciate y'all, but I didn't get that one. So now, am I jealous that I don't have as much? And on the flip side, I'm giving and you're not showing appreciation for what I'm presenting to you, because it's going to mess up whatever you have over there. Like, I would love to see an actual contract.
Same.
That'd be nice to see. Yeah. Yeah.
Because what stipulations are you putting on there? And then what is the out for the student athlete? Right?
And how
like,
long am I attached to that? Because I know there's some sharks out there that'd be like, I'm gonna get this kid in college and I'm gonna build up something to where I'm gonna still be able to be a part of this journey even after, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah,
like
that's
you
what I
didn't
need to see. Like, is it legal to even go into any long-term contracts like that based on NIL? Right.
Right.
I don't know. I would love to get my hand on at least a standard one. And then you see, the superior ones that is like, oh yeah, there's only one of those, but there's 45 million of these. Like, I would like to see what it looks like, because that's how we start the conversation.
Mhm.
Like, we start at the base level, and then it's like how high it could go. And because it's still fairly new, it could still be like extraordinary in 10 years.
Yep.
Right? Or it's going to go back down because of how broad it's gotten. And it's like, yeah, I'm losing control. NCAA, I'm losing control. Like, then we got to put this back down. So who knows where it's going to be in 10 years.
Yeah.
All right. I want to have this conversation. We're going to shake it up a little bit. So we understand, like, no matter how much you get from an NIL deal, if you're playing in the NBA or the NFL or in the MLB, it's big bucks. But let's talk about women's sports, where these young ladies is eating in college, and then they go to a different league where, that's just not what it is.
Right.
So does this change the game and force other organizations to kind of step it up? Or how does this even play? Because now, if I'm not mistaken, like, certain athletes are opting to stay in college a little bit longer. Like, let me go ahead and eat a little bit longer before I transition. You know what I mean? Like,
it should.
Just by NIL? Like.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think that let's talk about the W. I think the average is about 70, maybe 100.
Yeah,
but if I'm
not to put her name out there, but that's the number one overall pick in WNBA draft, signed, I think, a 4-year deal, a little over $250,000, and broke down to about 70-ish a year.
Yep.
However, her bag is coming from sponsorship with brands. Like, that's where the money is being made, not necessarily for the WNBA. But as much as I agree with women should be paid more, particularly now, because I'll be honest, like, I have a young daughter, and so we went to a couple of the games in the NCAA tournament. Matter of fact, to UCLA, because they host the first round, so we got to see a couple of games. But the women's tournament was more exciting than the men's tournament this year, and I don't have any problem saying that. Like, there was a lot of hype around the women's NCAA tournament. But the problem with their pay is more, it has to do with media contracts than necessarily the game. Like, why does the NFL, the NBA, the MLB get such great deals with these media people that the WNBA does not? Like, that needs to change, but that's not your question. Let's set that aside for a second.
Yeah.
But to your point though, just like with women, like they definitely need to change how they're thinking about that on a broad level, and even just like the benefits that they get. But all that is, it's a parallel conversation because the money isn't there. It's hard to even give them the benefits and the facilities and the travel benefits that they need to feel like real professional athletes.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
And
I
they
love
shouldn't
that.
have to still go out of the country
To get a
during
bag.
the off
To
season.
go get a bag,
Right?
yeah.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
that type of mentality and that whole paradigm in that way has to change. And
Facts.
hopefully, because of what happened in the NC2A tournament, even the ticket prices for the women's tournament were higher than men. So we got to look at these things and kind of transition that to the professional level,
Mhm.
hopefully, but then we're probably at a space now where it's like, oh, that was just this year. You got to show me 10 years of this happening before we do anything. So
Yeah.
it's starting now. We need to start paying attention to that to get women professional athletes paid.
No, agreed. I heard a stat. I need to fact check this stat, but I thought it was really, really interesting. But the gentleman that said it quoted the demographic that goes to WNBA games the most, and J-Bo, you might have some insight to this with your experience, was straight males with daughters. And I thought that was
Exactly what it was.
interesting stat. In my mind, I'm thinking LGBT community, but it was straight males with daughters are the number one demographic
Yep.
to attend WNBA games for a multitude of reasons, but also the second being affordability. Like for $150, I can sit close to the court, while at a Laker game, $150 had you in the 300 section.
Yep. And it's groups too. That was another thing. They was taking groups out. No, you hit it right on the nail. It was fathers that love the game, that have daughters that were passionate about it, and this was how they were exposing them. So these are real fans.
Mind blown.
You know what I mean? Yeah, mind blowing. Yeah, it was very, very, very unique experience. So here go my other question now, because Bill, me and you go back and forth with this all the time, and we always lean one way or the other. So let's go ahead and bring the topic. So Bill and I, we always talk about, like I said, we have children, and our children they're very young. So we don't even know what their potential is going to be, but we see potential in them very early. But because we played at a certain level, we know how to kind of get there. Like we at least know how to get our kids to Division I. Can't take them out to get to the play on Sunday, but at least we can get you to Division I. But a lot of times we'd be like, F this, focus on business, entrepreneurship, or finding a career, right? And then other times we'd be like, damn, I see the light at the end of the tunnel if I push you in this athlete way, especially now you can get a bag early too. Do you think for first generation athletes, I know that's the thing. Like I said, people that's trying to get it out the mud and they got a kid that got talent, I know they're putting all their chips in that basket. But for others that may have options, how do you think this changed things? Because I'm gonna be honest with you, for a long time, I was big off of, hey, my son should be looking to these things. Yeah, I want you to play sports to build character. And if you so happen to get the opportunity, now I'm like, nah, fuck that. Excuse my language. Hey, we're gonna run it up. Let's go. Let's take this thing serious. We're gonna take it where it can go. I still want you to be a well-rounded kid and get involved with other things, but we pedal to the metal with this. Where you at with it now?
What is pedal to the metal?
All right, so yeah, go ahead. So pedal to the metal, I still have an ethos. No matter what you do, you want to strive to be the best at it, and you want to give it your all, and let the results, fall wherever they fall, whether that be academics, just being more sociable and just learning things, and definitely when it comes to sports. But I'm starting to really, really kind of lean with sports. At first, I was just, hey, I want to introduce my kid to sports, want to see where he's at. He's good if he likes it.
How come when you talk about sports, it's a little but when it comes to business, it's Why is there a difference?
That's where I'm starting to evolve. You're right. I'm glad you pointed that out, Kat. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Like
it might have could have been because of my reality. I dedicated so much into it, and I didn't reach my final destination. However, as I reflect, I got free education. I got to travel. I met great people. And to be honest with you, like I said, I played for a major program in a major conference. Like I'll do it all over again.
Right. So it took, as a parent, have to create that same intensity on both sides of the scale. Right. So as difficult as that may be because of where you've come from, you're creating a reality for your kid though. Right. So you can't make one thing look and the other one look. right?
Yeah.
You got to show like both of them, because you don't just walk with your left foot.
Sure.
You have to create that balance. And
Yeah.
I'm all about that balance for me.
I have many thoughts around this. To Jabari's point, this is a very consistent conversation amongst us.
It's a topic within itself, ain't it?
No, seriously. And I even be vulnerable. Like my wife actually was giving me some feedback about this not too long ago, because I straddle the fence on intensity and will come back across the line and say, actually, I'm going to be hands off and allow them to navigate their own journey. And she's like, I need you to pick a side. Like, either you're going to be intense and we're going to go all in. To your point, Kat, like there is no dichotomy between the two, or you're going to be hands off and allow them to experience life on their own. The challenge that I go through and the part why I'm being vulnerable is because I see the athleticism, and I can tell you unequivocally, I'm against trying to push my kid too far and live my life through them, or try to live my failures through them and say, you can go do X, Y, and Z. Like, I played the game, I took it as far as I could. And at some point, as every player that plays a sport, the road ends at some point. For others, it's longer, for others, it's shorter, right? But we all have our own race to run. And then at the same time, being mindful of the fact that my kids are 9 and 10. And I want them to be 9 and 10. I don't want them to behave like adults at 9 and 10. Like, I think there is beauty in allowing a kid to be a kid at times. But striking that balance of when it's time to be a kid, when it's time to put in work, is the part that I struggle with the most in this particular chapter of my life of having kids that are in sports. Because again, you'll peel back, like the apple won't fall too far from the tree. I look at my kids and say, you guys are athletic. Like, I'll call it what it is. My daughter is athletic. My son is athletic. Do I think they're the most athletic? Absolutely not. But there's enough there to cultivate, to figure out where the body is going to matriculate to down forward. But having that balance is a really, really hard thing. And then at times you'll get inspirations from other stories, right? I mentioned one earlier around how one particular kid was trained from a young age, and look where they are now. It doesn't mean that your kid couldn't be that, but at what cost? All of this comes with a cost. You see what I'm saying? And so do you want to rob them of their childhood of 9 and 10? I was waking up at 5 years old. I don't know if I can sleep good at night waking my kid up at 5. And this is a me thing, and I'll be the first to own that. But at the same time, what I also realized, and this is why J-Bo and I go back to this conversation so much, Kat, is because we were mostly first generation. I wasn't. I had 2 uncles that played college football. One is in the Hall of Fame at Oregon. The other one went to the NFL. So to some degree, my experience is a little different because I was groomed into this, but it wasn't forced. It was, I'm following the footsteps of the men in front of me, and I'm just trying to be able to have a conversation at Thanksgiving table saying, you know what, you was right. Like, I just want to be a part of the conversation. So that was my driving factor, to be mentioned in the same name as them. But other kids that are first generation, like to J-Bo's point, that's their golden ticket. My kids don't live that lifestyle. Like, if I'm being pretty honest, they live kind of an affluent lifestyle. Like, they have somewhere they can call home. They travel out the country a few times a year. Like, they're being exposed to things that makes it hard to have that grit and that drive. And so what I was telling my wife, to make come full circle, and I'm sorry for the rant here, but
go ahead. Cook.
You know, I straddle that line of trying to push them, but it's hard to push drive. You either have it or you don't. And that's why I go backwards. Like, at some point, I got to be hands off and allow them to experience this journey called life. And if they really want it, they'll go get it on their own, because what you know for a fact is, if they do continue to pursue these routes of sports, one day I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to be pushing them in at all. I have to be the voice in the back of their mind. But at some point, they got to take the baton and carry it themselves. At what point do they take that baton is up to them. But that, again, that's the part that I struggle with and go back and forth with. That was, sorry for the rant.
No, so this is what I feel. As a parent, you are never hands off, ever. So you can get that whole mantra, or I'm gonna have hands off. You're never hands off, ever hands off. Even after you're gone, your mental preparation that you gave them is still going to be hands on. So hands off is out. So we can just stop saying that, because we're never going to do it. It's never going to happen, ever. Because what you've put into them will be with them for the rest of their lives. So your hand is still on it, right? It's how you approach it. You're saying that you want them to stay kids. Well, they're playing a game. So everything is still a game. So they're still growing and learning. So as long as we're keeping it learning and fun to where they are, they're not going to see the heaviness that we as adults put on it because we've seen it before.
Mm.
So as long as you allow them to experience, and that experience broadens opportunities and broadens exposure, but still have that challenge to it, they're going to roll with it because it's fun. They learning something. They may not like it, but it was like, oh, that was kind of fun now that I reflect on it, right? And then also give them the opportunity to express what they feel, what they see, how they experience that moment, because they may not experience the moment the same way a parent does. So it's like you have those open conversations, like, how did you feel about the game today? It was like, oh, I missed this and I did that. And so now you have to look at yourself like, oh, are they only picking out what they didn't do right because they want to beat me to it? Right. So it's like, okay, so maybe I'm a little critical and I'm not supportive and coaching in that space. So we have to watch what we're doing because they're trying to appease us as the adult.
Now that's a good one. That's a good one because so for context, the man I was telling you about that played the sport will come to my games. I'd always look for their validation, right? And when I tell you, Kat, even on my best games, it was never, hey man, that pick you had was nice, or that touchdown, or that tackle, or that big hit. It was you missed that tackle, you dropped this ball. Like it was only focusing on the areas to get better, and to a point where I just became numb to feedback. Was like, screw it, it's gonna roll off like water. So indirectly though, right? Alan Watts even said like we unintentionally teach people how we do things, right? And they unintentionally would just repeat this cycle. But to the point now where I'm critiquing my kids and say you did X, Y, and Z. So that's a pretty profound question to ask them and to see their response. I might take you up on it. Jay, but we're having a therapy session. You just
No. Listen, bro, you don't understand how many of these nuggets I'm putting in my bag because I'm already recalling because I'm like, all right, listen, the athleticism, I don't got to worry about with my son, but it's the other thing. Like he's still in character mode. Like my son to go and do something spectacular on the field, and then the next play you see him literally like playing with flowers. Like, bro, what are we doing? So I'm trying to have that balance, but as far as in the groom and prepare, I'm also seeing other things. Like I made, like when he comes home, like I interview him to see how he answers questions, and I'm like, yo, am I doing too much or am I doing the right thing? As
but
for
how
me,
are you making it feel though?
no pressure. I am making it seem like it's fun. And the moment he's like, yo, I'm out, it's like, all right, I'm up. So if we get 2 reps in, we good. If we get 10 reps, I'm also good with that
and
as
then
well.
it's like, so why did you stop? Right? Ask him, like, okay, why? You don't like why? Yeah. And it's like, oh, I'm hurting, I'm tired, I'm this. Like they have to start using words of reasons, right? Why did you do that? You know, what were you thinking when you thought that? Right?
Because if I explain to him my process, like, bro, son, you're very articulate and charismatic. I see an alley for you. You get what I'm saying? He's not gonna understand that. You get what I'm saying? So I'm trying to make it seem like a game. Like, hey, if you can, like you said, articulate your thoughts and show your charm and all of this, this is how we can set this thing up in the future. He will be oblivious to that. And like Bill was saying, so my experience was different. Like I wasn't even allowed to play sports until I was 12 because my grades was bad and I was getting in trouble. So I didn't get any pressure from my dad. You get what I'm saying? And to be honest with you, I didn't care, you know? So, but it worked for me. Like, hey, my dad just wanted to make sure that I stay out of trouble and get good grades. And I had my own passion in sports. But with my son, it's like, I got the passion in sport. You like it. I don't know if it's a passion yet. And he's still too young to figure that out. So I don't want to, because of how I view something, overcompensate. And at the same time, I want to let some things blossom organically as well. So that's why I'm always conflicted and confused, if that makes sense.
So my question to you guys is, why you guys always have your hands up in the air like you're surrendering to a moment or something? You got your hands off and you're doing this. Like, why are you backing up like that? Help me understand that.
Man, we tired of fighting, man. We tired of fighting. We've been fighting all our life.
Where's the fight? It's not a fight.
No, what I mean by that is like we're always been pushing so many things and trying to control, which is it's a pro and a con to that. But you know what, the people we love the most, i.e. our offspring, we don't want to, one, ruin a relationship. Right. 2, ruin an experience as well. So it's a fight. But if we see potential, we're like, we can see something you can't see. So, you know, it's just that fine line.
But it's like, if you're seeing the potential and they don't have the passion or not intrigued by reaching the potential that you think you see, how will you handle that?
That's an answer for Kat. I don't know. I don't know.
So y'all need to work on that.
Yeah, I'm for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna be humbly, I do not know.
Sure do. But to your point though, like it's, it's I don't know. It's hard to strike a balance, Kat, because it's polarity at the end of the day. Like, and I struggle trying to be in the middle. It's I'm either here or I'm there. There is no in between.
That's an athlete though. We don't play in the middle.
But the thing called life requires understanding that gray area. You're dealing with the whole development of a whole human that hasn't really experienced the left or the right yet. They're kind of just finagling all over the place. They're not coloring inside the lines just quite yet. They just want to see what the crayon looked like on the paper. And there's a part of us that has to allow for that expression until we start guiding the expression of what they're doing. Like, okay, now you got all over the paper. Now let's bring it in, right? Let's bring it in scaffold ways, like not all at once, but a little bit at a time, a little bit more every time. And then just seeing how they go. Like one thing I always encourage parents to do of athletic kids, like nowadays, is journal. What are you going through when you see them doing this? Because they're feeding off of your emotions intentionally or unintentionally. So you have to make sure that you're emotionally intelligent enough to be in this moment with your kid, that they know it's still dad. He loves me. He wants the best for me, but he's going to push me to levels that I'm uncomfortable with. What does that make them feel like? Because you don't want them to always feel failure, but not always feeling like pressure to meet someone else's expectation out of my ability. Like that there's a balance that needs to be put there. And all of that goes back to NIL. It's like, yeah, it's out there, but do I really need to take it? Because I can't do what you're telling me that is necessary for me to get this bag.
So Kat, let me paint this picture for you real quick before you land. And maybe you can kind of help bring this all in full circle. And let me paint this picture. So Kat, you have a son or a daughter who's genetically inclined, likes sports because it's just fun, builds camaraderie. He's kind of like, he or she kind of likes to challenge themselves. They like the reward. They just like it. But it's not just a passion yet, right? But you see the bigger picture, right? And you now know that literally a gift horse has just arrived with this NIL thing. And you realize, hey, we can kind of get to this bag, earlier than, sooner than later. How do you approach that with that child? And how do you kind of game plan around that, if you could share? Go ahead.
Because you have to find out if they're mature enough to handle it.
Okay.
Right. I know the opportunity is there, but there's a level of maturity that if you want to go this way, this is going to be required of you. And there's no backing up. There's no stopping in the middle. If this is what you're saying you got to go the full way through. You can't go like, yeah, I changed my mind. I don't want to do this. Like, no, that's not what it is. So you have to have those conversations. Even though you see the potential, do you see the maturity, right? Do you see them growing into that level of they can handle it, right? And like off topic, it's just like when parents want their kids to get their high school diploma and their associate's degree at the same time. Like that may not be the best for your kid because of the level of maturity when you transfer. Like you're going in as a junior. At 17, if you graduated high school at 16, like I did, not because I was smart, just my birthday late. But if you graduate high school at 16, like I'm 16 years old and a junior.
Yeah, it's a lot on.
That's a lot.
You won't see that these days. That may be a topic for another episode.
Yeah, that's out.
Kids
but
back
it's
now,
the level of maturity.
18, 19-year-old seniors.
Yeah.
Well, just because my birthday was late, but that was.
Well, no, I know about
But we still have that where parents see the potential of their kid, like they're intellectual, they can do it. But then when they actually accomplish that, do they get early burnout? Right. So those are other things that we have to look at. Like just because the opportunity is there doesn't mean it's for you or for you at this time. It's like, so it's like, yeah, I would love for you to get this bag, but can you handle that bag? Right? Or you let them get the bag, let them fumble the bag, and then we have to try to recover from that. What if the recovery time and opportunities aren't there like it was before? So you just have to be so extremely cautious. And just because it's there doesn't mean you have to go grab it. Like, let's see if we can handle it. Let's see if that's something for us. If not, let's look for something else. Not saying to make you do less than, but you want to be efficient and effective in everything that you're doing. I'm not going to set you up to fail. But then if you said I can do it, hands off, right? Okay, go ahead. But where's the safety net for recovery, right?
Right.
So, again, for me, I'm in the gray area. It's like, if you want it, this is what it's going to take. Now, if you say you want it, you got to go all in. There's no backing down. There's no changing your mind midstream. You got to go full out. But if you do decide I can't do this, then there has to be a reason. Let's express why, because you can't just quit every time something becomes uncomfortable.
That part,
right?
That makes sense.
And then you can't not go for something because it's something you've never done. So it's that flip of the coin. You every instance and every thing will have to be individualized in that moment. And at 9 and 10 years old, let's play. Child development talks about play therapy and play learning all the time. So just keep it in that same vein, because they make cash registers as toys. So we always talk about money. So you can have that Nerf football and that cash register at the same time.
There we go. Hey, we can always, they got fake microphones. We can always practice.
Hey, we can always do it.
Last question. NIL. Is it everybody eats, or it's only for the elites?
Oh,
that's a hell of a question.
Here I go in the middle again, right?
Okay.
Everybody may not eat.
You just said you was gonna pick a side, Kat.
I was like, everybody may not eat, but you can get a snack.
Seriously.
Somebody can get a snack.
Right,
I'm gonna have a Thanksgiving meal, or I'm gonna have a lunch. Hey,
okay.
Eating is eating, right? So
it's still levels to this shit, huh?
It's still levels.
Still
levels.
Okay.
But
it does open the playing field for all athletes to get a bag. How big that bag though is up for discussion.
Hey man, what they say, some money is better than no money. Take it out and get it.
Not all money is good money.
Not all money is good money too.
So there we go.
And even if you're around it and exposed to see how these plays are being made, you can maybe even make a bigger play later, whether you get the opportunity to go to the next level, or if you go into the real world, you'll be able to see and understand, hey, my quarterback, I seen him negotiate X, Y, and Z. I seen how he handled it. I'm going to take that playbook and apply it to my everyday life now that I'm in the regular world. So I in my humblest opinion, although this is going to be some wild, craziest, felonious shit we're going to see coming down the pipeline, I honestly think that overall, this is going to be a good thing for all parties involved, specifically these athletes and specifically these student athletes of the culture.
Yeah, because any NIL that you have, you can still bring those relationships with you in other aspects.
This is true.
I'm not so sure, y'all. Because it's still no, for real. I'm not so sure, because it's still, NIL is still a community of the haves versus the have-nots. And the haves will continue to win while the have-nots are walking from the outside, or looking from the outside in. Like, these smaller schools can't compete, so much so, right? I was telling Jabari earlier, Kat, I was speaking with a coach on Wednesday, telling me how he lost 2 of his corners because the haves slid in their DNs illegally and said, here's a better situation for you. And again, when you're talking about these immature minds, to go from a $20,000 NIL deal to a $100,000 NIL deal is a big jump. So it's still, I'm not so sure.
You're not so sure about what, though?
About what Jabari said about how, say it again, Jabari, because I can't even repeat
So
that.
what I was saying was, because my question, just to go back, was like, does everybody eat, or this is only for the elite?
No,
and what I was saying was, like, all right, this is big new phenomenon happening where everybody can have access to capital, i.e. NIL deals. But Bill, you and I know, being in this world, just because it's out there don't mean that you really got access. And just because they say you do don't mean. And it might be just for these specific people that can have access of it, but because it's in front of you, subconsciously, you're going to think that, oh, this is for me too. Nah, this ain't for you. You get what I'm saying? So I do think it can benefit everyone just being around it, because it's one thing about being around money or being around access and opportunity. You can still learn from someone else's experience versus yours. So I think it has some benefit, but I do also know and understand that everybody ain't about to get their hands on this. And so, like, where does that leave you? And I'm glad you mentioned that, Bill, because I understand where you work and I understand where you work, Kat. And it's like, is that really a reality? We can say yes in theory, but what does that really look like?
Because I've seen and I've heard, so say an NIL deal was 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I want more. What value do you have to get more? Right? So let's take the 10 and let's figure out a way to multiply that.
Okay.
But I've seen people leave 10 on the table.
Ooh.
And now they're looking for something.
Ooh.
Like, but you didn't have anything, right? Because of the thought that they can get 60, 90, 100.
So they count other people's pockets, thinking that that's fake
right. And it was like, yeah, that's not yours. No, that's not for you.
You don't play there. You play here.
You play here, and this is the 10 that we have available for you at Boogaloo Tech. Now, come to Boogaloo and do your thing.
Yeah.
And then we can see if the local car dealership is going to come in and give you something. If the local mom and pop shop going to come in and do something, like,
ain't nothing wrong with that. Take your 10 and your free hamburgers and keep it pushing.
You have Boogaloo, right? So understand where you're going and what options you have at where you're going. Now, you can't think that Boogaloo is now going to give you what a Power 5 is going to give you.
Yeah.
Well, if the Power 5 was going to give you, they would have came and got you.
Yeah.
Right.
They didn't.
That's a good point.
So can everybody eat? Yes, they can. Now, will they like what's presented to them? Probably not, because their appetite is a little bigger than what they can handle. Like my mom used to say, your eyes is bigger than your stomach, right?
Right.
Now you're getting greedy, right? So those are conversations that need to be had.
Very true. But if they tap in with J-Bo and HUEXM on how to market themselves, because NIL allows them to create merchandising for themselves, as popular as they can be, they can still create and 10x that $10,000 you was talking about.
For sure. Hold on real quick. Y'all good, fam? Give me like a high five. You good? All right. Hey guys, that's what happens when you record it. Hey, in local moments, that's our time. We don't win a full hour. You know how it go. Hey,
I love it. Give me a
high five.
That was great.
This is HUEXM and HUEXM, man. Listen, I appreciate y'all for spending this time with us. I hope that you guys was able to see something valuable. I hope that Bill, myself, and Kat was able to really share some valuable information. If you have questions, we humbly invite you for dialogue. You know, message us, email us. I'll put everything in the description on how to contact us. Like I said, we're here to serve, we're here to help, and to spread value. Y'all got anything to share before we wrap it up?
Nope. Keep it going.
Each one teach one.
Each one teach one. Well, y'all already know. Y'all know the routine, man. Stay positive, stay productive, stay in the presence. This is HUEXM Sports. I'm Coach J-Bo. That's Dr. Katrin Wilson.
Billy Mack.
Billy Mack. And we'll holler. Let my guys get it and have a good time.
All right. Have a good one.
For sure.